Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany Eddy, and I'm so pleased that you can join us for the Pease Update. And joining me here is Paul Brean, the Executive Director of the Pease Development Authority. Thanks, Paul, for being on your podcast.
Thank you, Tiffany. I appreciate you hosting.
And also we have Brigadier General Bill Davis, who is Commander of the Air National Guard, the New Hampshire Air National Guard. Brigadier General, thank you so much for your time and coming on.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Well, honored to have you. There's so much to talk about, but want to just start by discussing, could you please tell me about your role and the role of the New Hampshire Air National Guard?
Certainly. I'm the commander of the Air National Guard in New Hampshire. There's also an Army National Guard that fall underneath one General Michaelitis. There's our parent organization, which we oversee, the 157th Air Refueling Wing, which is our largest single presence here in New Hampshire. And our mission is aerial refueling, and we have 12 KC-46 tankers.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it's a big unit.
And you operate out of the Portsmouth International Airport?
We do. The former Pease Air Force Base, now the Pease International Trade Port. And the guard base is about 216 acres, a component of that larger facility.
So you get to work with this guy quite a bit, I would imagine.
We work quite frequently, and we have a lot of intertwined interests.
So if you guys could explain this to me a little bit, because we have the commercial side of the airport, but then we also have the Air National Guard there. How does this all work together?
Well, certainly the Air National Guard, New Hampshire Air National Guard, is our largest stakeholder, is our largest, I don't want to call them a tenant, as they technically did not transfer their property during the original base closure, but they are our largest stakeholder at the facility, and we do work closely. Specifically, we can go into a little bit more detail, but we have a joint use operating agreement that allows the military to perform their duties at the airfield, and then we also are able to utilize it for commercial endeavors, such as air service or corporate jet activity, and even general aviation recreational flying.
And this all came about because of the BRAC closure in 1992?
Yes, the Guard was left as a resident of the former Air Force Base, and the remainder of the property went to the Pease Development Authority.
And could you explain that? Like, first of all, what does BRAC, what's that an acronym for? What does it mean? And how critical is it to New Hampshire that we survived that round of closures back in 92?
So BRAC is an acronym for Base Realignment and Closure, and it's a process that is run periodically, a congressional process that oversees the properties of the Department of Defense and evaluates which ones are the most vital for the national defense and deserve to be continued, and which ones may be considered for divestment.
Mm-hmm. And so the fact that that Pease was chosen to stay open, what does that mean to the Seacoast region and really the state of New Hampshire?
Well, the BRAC in the early 90s was very significant to the Seacoast because the Pease Air Force Base was a large employer and a large presence. And the presence is much smaller now. But because of the geographic location of the base, the strategic location that we say frequently, its proximity to Europe and the Middle East, it's a vital part of our national defense. And it was retained as a Guard base and is still very active to this day.
Excellent.
As General Davis mentioned, the closure of the full Strategic Air Force Base in 92 was staggering to the Seacoast community and into the state of New Hampshire. Just to put it in perspective, there were 6,000 jobs tied to the base. It was unknown if those jobs would be maintained. They did downsize, and we lost about 4,800 jobs to the base. To put that in perspective, the City of Portsmouth school system, I believe they closed 2/3 of their elementary schools because you had so many men and women Air Force soldiers that were going to be relocated. Unfortunately, it wasn't a great economic time on the Seacoast with other recessions and other impacts following suit. And the state really didn't know what was going to be done with the property. No one had the money to purchase the property from the Air Force. So essentially the Pease Redevelopment Commission was statutorily created to take a deep look and identify what are we going to do with this 2,800 acre parcel. What are we going to do to try to stimulate restoring those jobs and minimize the impact on the actual community and state. And I have to say, we're very fortunate that our predecessors took a deep look. We don't have an amusement park there. We don't have a large mall space there. We now have an area that supports the Air Force's long-term mission of that geographical important location in the world. We're able to host a refueling wing, but also we've created a viable commercial endeavor that has economic impacts in the billions to both the seacoast and the state. Specifically, we're looking at 250 companies on the trade port, civilian companies. We're looking at about 11,000 people that report to work at the base now, compared to those 6,000 that we're so worried about losing. So it's working. We're proud to say that we're contributing to the economy. We're able to meet what that original Pease Development Recommission envisioned. We're offering out good living wage salaries from a multiple eclectic industry sector, from pharma to manufacturing to business. So it's certainly, it's been called the best BRAC realignment closure redevelopment of a base in the country, and we certainly are proud of that, and I'm very grateful for the people that had the foresight to think about how this could work.
And there's incredible companies, like you said, you touched upon, but there's companies like Lonza. Perhaps the cure to diabetes could be being created there. COVID vaccines were being created there, is my understanding.
Yes, Lonza is basically a pharmaceutical manufacturer that essentially will manufacture one of their customers' medicines. And the big news right now with Lonza, they've signed a deal with Vertex Pharmaceutical, where they will be making a genetic cure for type 1 diabetes patients. They're building about 130,000 square foot facility right now on Pease, where Vertex's pharmaceuticals will be made, and specifically targeting the manufacture of this genetic targeted medicine that will allow type 1 diabetes patients to not have to be dependent on insulin.
That's incredible.
It is, and it takes a little bit of while. It takes a little bit of a duration for these deals to come through at Pease, but when they do, it's usually something of pretty significant magnitude. Specifically, we've seen the growth of Sig Sauer, defense contracts all throughout the world. That's happening right at Pease. That those decisions in manufacturing to get those armed force contracts are happening at Pease, and it's pretty amazing to see raw steel going in, and then the final contract commitment going out as a finished product. That's all being done on site. So we like to think it's big picture stuff, and we're really pleased that the predecessors didn't kind of seek the quick buck and maybe retail mall or something like that. We really think we're contributing in multiple ways to bigger scale economy.
It's amazing too. And then turning back to the airport a little bit, Pease is a Portsmouth International Airport, a federally obligated airport. And what kind of aircraft, come in? We have the Air National Guard, we have Plane Sense. I think there's an emergency helicopter, I don't want to say a DART, but
MedFlight, medical flight, yes.
That can help people in their time of need. But if you could just kind of give me who uses the airport and why is it critical?
Yeah, I'll let General Davis speak to the specifics of the 157th Wing and maybe the fact that how fortunate we are to have that fleet and how unique it is to have that fleet. If you want to touch on that.
Sure. So we have, as I said earlier, 12 KC-46 Pegasus aircraft, air refueling aircraft, and that is our primary aircraft design, our core mission. And what a lot of people see and may mistakenly attribute to Pease, understandably, a lot of military planes of all services and all nations fly through Pease. as transients, but they operate primarily from the Paul side of the trade port runway, which he can touch on. But there's a very active military traffic there, external to Pease. So, pardon, I say Pease Air National Guard Base,
Okay.
component of Pease. And then there's a whole other facet of aviation on the PDA side.
So sometimes when I'm golfing over on the blue course, I'll see a giant plane maybe doing touch and goes.
Yep.
What is that, and why is that important?
Yep. So there's people who actually will time their golfing to hope to see that sort of thing, and then they clap and cheer when it goes by, which is pretty fun to watch.
It's cool.
Yeah, and the plane you're probably referring to is several large cargo planes that flow through Pease. Sometimes they'll do what's called touch and goes, and I'm not a pilot, but I've been close enough to them to pick up a few terms, where they will come and just use the runway. So the Pease runway is 11,321 feet long, quite long, and it's a great place to go to practice. So we'll see a lot of aircraft from different services that will fly through to get their training requirements done. And the planes that you see go over the golf course, sometimes you may see what seems like the same plane might go over you every 5 minutes for an hour.
Right.
And they're doing touch and goes.
But they could be from a different base somewhere else in the country?
Yep, they could be. So sometimes we have transients that are like a one-time shot, like they might come through once every couple of years. We have others who will regularly visit us. So the Rhode Island Guard unit C-130s will come through Westover, Massachusetts, C-5, the large cargo plane that you probably see will come through regularly to do transition work to land and take off. Also, you'll see active duty units come through with different planes. So yeah, there's some kind of like the Swallows of Capistrano returning regularly, and then there's just some one time that come through.
That's amazing. And then I believe Pease was hosting air exercises, or was the home base for air exercises that were going to be taking place, was it over Europe or over the Atlantic?
Well, we are a regular stop for exercises of not just aviation types, but we've also been the staging area for naval exercises in the past, for civilian military partnership exercises that take place either in or around Portsmouth. So Pease is a location that is ideal for many different purposes, and it's used for many different purposes. But one that you may be referring to just recently, I believe, and Paul, please correct me if I misspeak, but the Marine Corps held an exercise.
Operation Atlantic Alliance, I believe.
That
think
sounds
you're right, yeah.
right. Yeah, and that was staged out of Pease. But I'm not sure actually if they were on our side of the runway or your side of the runway.
Yeah. So Tiffany, my background was commercial aviation before I arrived at Pease. And I guess part of it's just being naive that if I saw a military airplane at Pease, I figured, oh, the Air Force has that. The
Yeah.
New Hampshire 157 is taking care of that. Quickly, I learned that that's simply not the case, that their mission is designed for their mission, and their resources are designed to handle their mission. And the majority of the military activity that isn't specific to the 157th Wing's mission would be handled by the commercial side of the airport.
Okay.
For instance, we may have a C-17 wing out of San Diego or Texas that is being mobilized into theater. And they may fly those C-5s or C-17s loaded up, ready to bring material supplies, or airmen and airwomen, or Marines and Army soldiers over to theater. What they likely do is usually they'll make their way to Portsmouth. They'll bed down for maybe a night or two before they decide to go across the Atlantic, cater the aircraft up, fuel the aircraft up, and get the crew some rest, usually in a nice hotel in Portsmouth proper. But that would all be handled on the commercial side unless it was, paired with the 157th's mission. So incredible amount of resources by our fixed-based operator that helps support that. But to put it in perspective, we do about 2 million gallons of Jet A a month.
Wow.
And that is primarily to support those non New Hampshire Air Guard missions from other bases around the world. And, obviously we have some commercial activity in there and some cargo activity, but that is primarily the bulk of that fuel is going to other defense units that are utilizing Portsmouth for that technical stop.
Yeah, and I want to touch upon the commercial side too, with Breeze and Allegiant and new destinations that are coming out of Portsmouth International Airport. But one question, it just occurred to me. I think we can talk about this, but Bob Kraft's plane. A year or so ago, I remember seeing it on the runway, and he was lending out his plane to help bring soldiers home. Or do you remember that?
So the Department of Defense has what they call the Civilian Reserve Air Fleet. And please, General Davis, if I have anything wrong here, please correct me.
So far, you're right on track. They refer to it as CRAF.
The CRAF.
That's the acronym.
We call it the CRAF program. That essentially the Air Force or other branches of the military wouldn't have enough aircraft or resources to move around the number of American soldiers and contractors that we have. So they do contracts with airlines. Mm-hmm. And yes, to specifically to the Patriots plane, it's a Boeing 757 that off-season, off the Patriots schedule. As we all know, it's expensive to have an aircraft, and I think it's a good business decision to put that aircraft out to service when it's not being utilized by the Super Bowl winning New England Patriots. So they do put that out to lease, and at one point I know it was flying under the CRAF program, and fortunately some lucky soldiers were able to take a flight on, where Tom Brady and others get to hang out on. So yeah, pretty cool that we had that come in, and haven't seen it in a bit, but hopefully it'll be busy in a couple months bringing the Patriots around the country.
Yeah, that would be good. Hopefully another Super Bowl.
There we go.
Turning over to the 157th, could you maybe just explain what is their role? How does this work? I've never been on a refueling mission yet, but fingers crossed one's coming up. But why is it important that it operates out of Portsmouth?
Mm-hmm. So as we discussed, the plane we currently fly is the KC-46, and it's based on a Boeing 767, so it's a modified Boeing 67. The plane it replaced here at Pease Air National Guard Base was the KC-135, mm-hmm. which was developed in the 50s and was based on a Boeing 707. So this plane is worldwide capable. We operate all over the world. Its primary mission is air refueling, but it can also carry cargo, passengers, and aeromedical evacuation if it's so tasked. It's a brand new airplane, and it represents the first time that a new aircraft has been fielded to the Air National Guard and the Air Force simultaneously. So we received it at the same time the active duty received it, which was remarkable and notable. Our location in the Northeast and our proximity to refueling tracks and also the routes over to Europe and the Middle East make us a prime location for operating this type of mission.
Tiffany, if I can put my airport community director hat on for a second. The KC-46, implementing that into our fleet model at the airport actually has made my job a lot easier. Specifically, the Boeing KC-46 is next generation engines as far as noise. Mm-hmm. So what we would call our the decibel level is a lot lower to the community. Additionally, with the KC-46 fleet, New Hampshire Air National Guard also received a full flight safety Boeing KC-46 flight simulator.
Okay.
So there's actually less hours flown in the actual aircraft in what we call our airfield pattern.
Oh, wow.
Those pilots are actually training in the flight safety simulator, whereas with the old aircraft, pilots have to get so many night hours a month. They have to get so many touch and goes a month. They now have the ability to do that flying in the simulator, which takes relief off of the pattern. So it's something that we recognize on a systemic level that less noise in the pattern, mm-hmm. less aircraft activity in the pattern, and it really was a goal of the Air Force, and we're seeing it firsthand that it's a great community aircraft to be operated locally.
And how long have they been in operation at Pease?
Since 2019,
Okay.
we started receiving them, and a few augments to Paul's point. One is that the plane is quieter than its predecessor, which had 4 engines. This plane has 2 engines, so the noise impact is lower. Also, the environmental impact is lower. And when we were soliciting public support for getting the KC-46, that was helpful, that we were able to say this plane is actually, it's really quieter, and no offense to our civilian brothers and sisters down the ramp, but it's actually quieter than many of the planes that operate on the civilian side. Now, fighters are a different story, and they come through occasionally, but they don't have the low noise. So the plane is it is brand new, it is state of the art, and we're very lucky to have it. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see it in action. How complicated is it to do an air refueling mission? It looks, I've seen videos of it. It looks very challenging, but is that really the case? It must take hours and hours of training and practice to be able to do it. And also, it's got to be mission critical, because when these guys are over the Atlantic and they need fuel, the fuel has to be delivered.
Yes, it certainly is very complicated, and not my area of expertise, but I've picked up a lot from being around. And I can say, like this, the way that the refueling you'll see is materially different than the refueling we did with the former plane. So the current plane, the operator sits towards the front of the plane and uses a screen with 3D glasses to remotely refuel the aircraft behind the plane, whereas the predecessor, you actually were physically in the back of the plane looking down and manually operating controls to refuel it. So that was a big advance. And it involves timing, that the planes rendezvous at the right time, at the right altitude. Safety is a concern, weather is a concern, night or day is a concern. So it is like a ballet, a complex ballet to pull off all of those things. And when planes are transiting across the ocean, to your point, smaller aircraft like fighters tend to not have a lot of internal fuel capacity, so refueling is an essential task for them to frequently do on a transit across the ocean. And that happens regularly with our planes and many others in the Air Force.
Oh, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Speaking of fighter jets, because you touched upon that, I want to bring up the air show that's coming up. And
Yeah, we're excited. But real quick on the heels of Bill,
Sure.
excuse me, on the heels of General Davis, an Air Force pilot did tell me that nobody kicks ass without tanker gas.
Yeah.
I think is that you saying?
It's true. Yeah, it's an acronym that we like, and yes, it is true.
And you know what? It occurs to me, how many air refueling wings are there in the Air National Guard? Is this one of how many?
19.
19. Okay, so pretty special that we have one.
Yep, and as we said earlier, we're the first for the 46, and there is one more now in New Jersey that is going to receive the 46, and there's one in Selfridge, Michigan, Selfridge Air National Guard base, Michigan. But we were the pioneers in the Guard, and I'd like to add that we are in the process of standing up a test center. To develop new technologies and capabilities for the KC-46. And that was a great achievement that we were able to get that designation. And it's because of work that our people did, innovations that they came up with that convinced our higher-ups that we were a site worthy of increasing our footprint. And so that's going to be a new mission for us going forward.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yep.
So Blue Angels.
Blue Angels.
Thunder over New Hampshire Air Show.
Okay, so this is coming up in early September. I think it starts September 7th?
6th and 7th.
6th and 7th, yes.
Excellent. And what can we expect? Why would someone want to go to this?
Well, the air show is one of my favorite activities all year. We're going to have a great show this year. The Blue Angels are a huge draw. We're expecting 40 to 50,000 people a day, depending on weather, of course, is a big factor.
Yeah.
But if we get good weather, the show lineup is excellent, both the flying acts and the static displays, the displays on the ground. Interesting aircraft from all across the services and all across the civilian spectrum. So it will be a great family-friendly event, and it'll be some action and some education, and it will let us show, what we do and the professionalism of our men and women, and we're really looking forward to it.
Do you think this is a fun way to just remind people too of the importance of the mission?
It covers a lot of things. Yes, so it definitely shows the importance of our mission, the breadth of our mission. They will a KC-46 flying demonstrations part of the show. So a KC-46 will participate in the flying portion of the show and be on the ground as well. And so our Army National Guard soldiers will be there as well to show their some of their equipment and capabilities, and other services. And it's for such a concentrated spot, it's an amazing variety of experiences. And it'll be held also in conjunction with a STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. Is that the last one?
Yeah.
That's the one I always forget by default.
For the past few years, we have been operating a STEM fair, and it's grown to the point where it fills 2 hangars of displays, and we bring in local schools and groups that show off their capabilities. That is a show unto itself, I think, and that's all part of the airshow program.
Robotics, technologies, it's amazing to be able to showcase these young students, what career paths they could take in the future. They do an incredible job. Whatever your focus is, these kids will be able to get hands-on experience in the static displays, in the STEM tents.
And the base, it's like a little city, and it gives everybody a chance to see all the parts of the city. So we have a police force, a fire department, personnel, we have a finance section, we have obviously pilots and maintainers, we have civil engineering and like a public works function, public affairs, we have lawyers. So our base is like a small community that has all sorts of functions to keep the community running.
Wow, that's fascinating. I had no idea.
And it's all right there.
That's great. I want to turn back over to you for a second and talk about the commercial side of the airport. But there's been some exciting additions with Breeze and Allegiant, and I know that the increase in passenger travel. There's been an increase in passenger travel, some new destinations.
Yes, we're at Portsmouth Airport. We're so fortunate to have 2 carriers, airline carriers that recognize the value and the efficiency of a secondary airport. We're certainly not a secondary airport in the military mind, but we are in commercial aviation and in our airline activity. And we're late to the game. We didn't become a commercial airport till 1992. Obviously, you have Portland Jetport, very successful to the north. We're a small state. We have Manchester, up the road a bit. We have Boston to the south, and then we have emerging secondary airports such as Worcester, and other airports that are trying to grow air service. We're very realistic in our air service, but we think we have a niche with Breeze Airways and Allegiant Airlines. They understand that most of the demographic going through our airport really want a very accessible way, whether it's to get to a leisure destination, whether it's the first time going to a brand name theme park, or if it's someone that has a second property in Florida and they want to spend time with a loved one or get a loved one up to spend time with them, that the rates, the fares on our tickets are usually to the point where you can afford to send someone up to make that kindergarten graduation or make that junior high baseball game. So we see a lot of that. We see a lot of repeat folks that still have loved ones in the family in the area, and are able to use the airline to kind of commute back and forth. But we're excited. Breeze Airways just announced Raleigh-Durham service starting in December 1st. So we can say that we have other places other than Florida on our flight map, but no, we do have about 6 destinations in Florida, from Orlando to Southwest Florida, Punta Gorda and Fort Myers, Tampa, St. Pete, and Sarasota. And really, I get asked a lot in the community, why don't your airlines go to anywhere else besides Florida? Mm-hmm. And what the airlines are very smart at is dialing capacity, and they see what's going through Boston. They see who's driving down 95 on the seacoast, isn't going up, isn't going over 101 to go to Manchester, but who is going to Boston. And they really do a targeted marketing to grab those folks and say, hey, instead of driving down to Boston, we can put you, on a low-fare flight direct into an airport right near where you ultimately want to go anyway. So it makes sense. We're excited. We'll do about 100,000 passengers a year this year, which, to put it in perspective, is very minute compared to Manchester and Portland and Boston. But for those seacoast residents that utilize it, it's like they have a private airport in their backyard, and we're really impressed by how it's resonating in the community, and we're starting to see those return customers. And there's incredible value there. If people look in to see what they're getting for what they're paying as far as parking and the actual airline ticket.
And there's been improvements to the terminal too, correct?
Correct. We're very smart. I never want to get out in front of my skis, but we build for the now, not so much for the future. But obviously, airport security has evolved, and we see it when we travel. There's new technologies. Well, those technologies take power and they take space. And we had something called the pandemic, where people don't really want to be corralled in a tight area. So my staff and I have gone to the PDA board to ask for, improvements. And I think we've been very smart about the square footage that we've added and the services that we've added. We know what we are and we know what we'll never be. Mm-hmm. There's multiple levels of limitations of where air service could go at Pease. We just simply don't have the infrastructure because of the commitment to the Guard and other entities. But we're smart, and we think we have a niche market, and we're going to make sure that niche market that chooses to fly is able to do it safely and efficiently through the building.
Yeah, it's a tremendous asset, I think, for the Seacoast region to be able to have this and have options to not have to drive down to Boston and fight through all that traffic, which it can take hours. And economically,
we priced our parking. And we didn't do an extensive survey. We basically sat around at a table and we said, what if you could park for a week? The average family vacation to Disney is a week. Mm-hmm. What if you could park at Portsmouth International Airport for what it costs to park at Logan for a day? So we came up with a number that right now it's $7. This was 6 years ago. We have to increase that. In January, we'll be going up to $9 a day. But in essence, we kind of wanted to put it out there that, hey, you can go on your whole vacation, park for a week at Pease, walk to the terminal, not have to take a shuttle bus, not have to take a moving sidewalk, literally walk with your loved ones or take our free courtesy van. And you can do that for the price of what it's going to cost you to park, for one day at Logan. So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's expensive. I think one of the other things, too, is there's nothing like coming home from a trip and being home as opposed to having to get in the car and drive an hour and fight through traffic. And it's such a pleasant way to come back to a smaller airport, much more relaxing.
It's interesting. So Breeze, they're an incredible airline. They actually have 3 cabins in their aircraft. They have what would equate to a first class, a business class, mm-hmm. in an economy. They call it something a little bit different, but essentially that's what it is. And we're familiar that there's some affluent demographics in the Seacoast. Mm-hmm. And almost every Breeze flight, that first class cabin is completely sold out. Wow. And if you're a frequent traveler down to Florida, that maybe you have a second home in Southwest Florida or Central Florida, and you live in a Rye, or you live in a Newcastle or Portsmouth proper, you're 6 minutes from the airport. It's a great story when it all works. It's a really good story.
Oh, there's a lot of great stories going on there.
And I would, to Paul's point about the size of the airport, for perspective or difference in perspective, while it's a second-tier airport volume-wise on the civilian side, on the DoD side, it's in the top 10 busiest towers for the Department of Defense in the system.
Wow. And
so it's a different, it's an apples and oranges kind of thing. But as part of our partnership, we perform certain functions on the Guard side, and the PDA performs certain functions on theirs. Air traffic control is one of the functions the Guard provides. So a DoD, Department of Defense tower, it is one of the top 10 busiest in the system.
So how does that work if I'm on a Breeze flight and it's flying into Pease? DOD is handling that, or?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So, yep. So the Guard, Air National Guard controllers control the entire airport from an air traffic standpoint.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yep. It's a 24-hour tower.
It sounds like a great partnership.
Yeah, it allows us to do about 70,000 operations a year. We have approximately 150 based aircraft at Portsmouth. And you know, like I said, we'll move about 100,000 passengers this year. We are home to one of New Hampshire's largest businesses, which is PlaneSense, one of the first fractional ownership jet companies out there. Essentially, you subscribe to own an equitable share in the actual aircraft, and they will have 2 pilots in the aircraft at your disposal and take you wherever you want to go. But they literally started out as a very small company, and they've grown into an incredible 500-plus employee company, and I believe they're up to roughly 70 aircraft. And they just mirrored their facility that they have in Portsmouth out in Nevada, with the intent of really kind of bringing that program on the west coast. But corporate headquarters are right at the airport in Portsmouth, and we're really fortunate to have them in a multitude of other small aviation firms at the airfield.
Wow, that's incredible. It started right at Portsmouth.
It actually started in Norwood, Mass. For a very short time, and then I think they understood the New Hampshire advantage. They actually went to, for a short term, they went into Manchester, New Hampshire, and I think forward thinking they knew that they would be a little bit landlocked with the larger airline activity and cargo activity at Manchester. So they decided to build a corporate facility at Pease, and it's been very rewarding to see them grow, and we think that they're due for another level of development, and we look forward to working with them.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And going back to 10th busiest tower, because that's very, very impressive. What does that mean, having all that activity in Portsmouth? It all sounds really positive.
Well, we are in a competitive business in the Air National Guard in that we provide a service, and that service is the defense of the United States and the support of the citizens of New Hampshire. So we have a dual role, state and federal. And the viability of the airport at Pease and the Guard mission is vital to our survival as an organization. And we think we are excellent. I mean, obviously that's selfish and parochial, but we really do, we excel at pretty much everything that we try to do. So our location, our aircraft that we have, the men and women, the quality of our personnel, they come together to a formula that's been very successful. So, and we look forward to that just getting better in the future.
Oh, wonderful. Any closing thoughts? It's okay if you don't.
It's an incredible partnership. It's an incredible partnership. Our predecessors did a great job thinking about it. We literally have the responsibility of clearing the airfield for their arrivals in the winter. Mm-hmm. We have to do that work for our contractual obligation that allowed us to get the property. If we're going to be putting all that energy into it, and we have this commercial side of the airport, we might as well try to get some revenue in by offering that service out to other carriers that want to operate there. But that's just a little bit of an idea of the mindset behind it, that our success leads to their success, mm-hmm. Their success leads to our success, and it's an incredible partnership that we have at all levels. From the folks that are actually doing the work out in the field to New Hampshire leadership and in the Department of Defense leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really seems to be taking something that potentially could have been a devastating, closure. And granted, there was jobs lost, and it for a while we contracted, but now it seems like that this has developed into an incredible success story for not just the airport, the commercial side, the Air National Guard, but also the residents out in the seacoast.
Absolutely.
General, any closing thoughts on your end?
Sure. I'd echo Paul's comments about the success of the partnership that we have, and we interact on many levels, and they are essential to our function, and they go quite well, and we appreciate the partnership very much. We're very much looking forward to the air show. It's going to be a wonderful event. It will give us a chance to really communicate our message to a broad audience. A lot of people, they see the gray planes flying around and they drive by the base, but they don't necessarily understand all that goes on there and all the opportunities that are there and all the functions that we perform and can perform. And so this would be another way for us to communicate that message. And it was great to be on the podcast with you and Paul as another way to share our story.
Well, it was wonderful having you on, and that was fascinating. I mean, I learned a lot, and I think that people know about the airport, but don't necessarily understand the partnership and how critical it is to not just the seacoast, but also to our country. So thank you both, Brigadier General Bill Davis, Commander of the New Hampshire Air National Guard, and of course, Paul Brean, Executive Director of the Pease Development Authority. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing this wealth of information.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
We hope we see you at the air show.
Yeah, of course. I can't wait. All right, thank you.
Thank you.